Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on exploring Vietnam. A few people are still joining, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. Hang on one second. I just had to click record. All right. So we are recording today's webinar, and we will send you the recording as well as the copy of the presentations later on today or tomorrow. So we will go ahead and get started if my slide will advance. There we go. All right, so today, hi, by the way, I'm Danielle Coco. I'm the Marketing Director at SUSTA. I'm going to give a very quick 5-minute overview about SUSTA, and then we're going to hear from our featured presenters. They are calling in and presenting from Ho Chi Minh City. They're in the Office of Agricultural Affairs at the U.S. Consulate. We have Gerald Smith. He began his recent tour as the head of the Office of Agricultural Affairs in the U.S. Consulate in Ho Chi Minh City back in August 2015. Before that, he was in D.C. as the branch chief for the Trade and Scientific Exchanges Division. And prior to that, he was in South Korea, as well as India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. We also have Megan Francic on the line. She is the agricultural attache in the same office as Gerald. This is her first overseas assignment with the Foreign Agriculture Service before joining Gerald in Vietnam. She served as the Office of Country and Regional Affairs Desk Officer for Brazil and the Southern Cone and the Grain and Feed Analyst for Asia. Excuse me. So we're delighted to have them on the line. One other bit of housekeeping, you guys are all muted right now, and we will have a question and answer session at the end, and you'll just type it in the Q&A or the chat box that you should see on your computer, and then whoever the question is for will go ahead and answer it. So anyway, thank you again. And one other thing, sorry, at the very bottom of the screen you will see that we will be sending out a survey, or when you log into your MySUSTA account, you'll see that you have a survey for this webinar. It's super short, but it's just important that we collect as much information as we can. So if you have 2 minutes, please log into your account after the webinar and complete that survey. All right, so SUSTA is funded by the USDA's Foreign Agriculture Service, which is the organization that Gerald and Megan are also with. We are a nonprofit trade association, and we help small businesses in the southern region that you'll see there in blue. We help those companies promote their agricultural and food, beverage products in foreign markets. So we do that through these two programs. They're market access programs. Through global events, we organize roughly 40 events throughout the world where our U.S. companies can meet qualified foreign buyers. And we also have a cost share program where we can reimburse half of certain international marketing expenses. These are the 3 types of global events that we have. Our inbound missions are where we bring the foreign buyers here to the U.S. and companies who sign up. They're typically about $25, so they're pretty inexpensive. But companies that sign up can meet one-on-one with the foreign buyers. It's usually, 30-minute meetings with each buyer, and it's a great way to get in front of quite a number of foreign buyers without leaving the U.S. and for a very low cost. The outbound trade missions function in a similar way, except the U.S. companies are the ones traveling overseas to meet one-on-one with the foreign buyers. In addition to that, of course, you're in the foreign countries, so you're going to go on retail tours and see, the groceries and the convenience stores where your product might be on the shelf. And you get really in-depth briefings from the either the agricultural trade officers over there or our consultants in the foreign country. And then, of course, we have pavilions at international trade shows, again, all over the world. SUSTA will rent out anywhere from 8 to 20 booth spaces, and we turn around and offer those to companies in our programs, typically at quite a significantly reduced cost. In addition to the price reduction, SESTA offers a turnkey experience. So companies coming with us really have SESTA holding their hand from the minute they sign up through the exhibition at the show. So really a great program for companies of all levels of export experience, but particularly for companies who are really new to exporting, we would say that our global events program is a great way to get started. And then I just wanted to mention one event that we're having in 2019 that pertains to this country, our Food and Hotel Vietnam, which is going to be in April next year. It's going to be in Ho Chi Minh City. We still have booth spaces available, and we still have our early bird fee. So you can see those fees up on your screen. And for that fee, you'll get your 9 square meter booth space with furniture, an interpreter who will be in your booth all the days of the show, as well as a shipping allowance. And I'd also like to mention that through our second program, Cost Share, you can apply to get your participation fee, a 50% reimbursement of that fee, as well as travel for the 2 employees or company representatives that would be going over. You could also get reimbursed for things like your promotional materials, promotional giveaway items, so maybe like pens or key fobs or something like that. If you wanted to advertise in the trade show directory, SESTA could reimburse 50% of those expenses. So I'll speak with you a little bit more about Cost Share, but anyway, this is quite an affordable way to see the Vietnamese market and to meet buyers there. And I believe Megan and Gerald will touch on this show as well. So our 50% cost share program that I just mentioned, this is the full list of expenses that SESTA can reimburse 50% of. For those of you who've been in the program, I won't bore you guys by going into detail about all of these expenses. If you're new to the program and you want to know more, please contact me after the webinar, and I would be more than happy to go into detail about all of these wonderful expenses that we can reimburse half of. The way the process works, though, just want to mention this, there is a $250 application fee for the cost share program. For global events, there's no participation application fee. You just pay for the events that you go on. But for cost share, we do have an administrative fee of $250. And then the minimum that we ask people to request in a year is $2,500 in reimbursement, meaning that you're spending $5,000 in eligible expenses. And then the maximum you can request if you're new to exporting and new to SESTA is $25,000 in a year. If you're an experienced exporter, your first year with SESTA, you can get reimbursed up to $50,000. And then participants who have 1 or more years in the 50% cost share program can get reimbursed up to $300,000. I also want to note that you pay a 6% administrative fee on the amount that you request in reimbursement. And then you have to apply first and then go out and do the whatever the promotional activities that you plan on doing, and then you get reimbursed. So once you've applied, then you go out, you conduct your approved promotions that are in your application, because you let us know in the application what you plan on doing. You collect all of the receipts, invoices, and proof of activity that are required by SESTA. Once it's all complete, you send it to SESTA. You don't wait till the end of the year. You just, as soon as the trade show is over or the advertising campaign is over, you send us the required documents, and then it's usually just a couple, 3 weeks, and we will send you the reimbursement. So sounds pretty straightforward, but I would be, again, happy to go over this in more detail with anybody after the webinar. Here is my contact information if you do want to get in touch, but I think everybody should have my email. It's Danielle@SESTA.org. Please like us on Facebook. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to Megan and Gerald. Guys, I'm passing the presenter privileges to you, so you should be able to share your screen now. All right, and it's coming up.
Okay, great. Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, great. Yeah, if it cuts out, just please let me know because sometimes we have some technical issues here. But thank you, Danielle, for the introduction, and thanks for setting up the webinar. I'm Megan Francic. I'm the Deputy in the Office of Agricultural Affairs here in Ho Chi Minh City, and I'm here with Gerald Smith, who's the Director of the office. And I'm going to give the presentation, and then we'll both be available for questions. And I just wanted to thank all the members who are on the phone for joining in this webinar, and we look forward to welcoming everyone here in April for Food and Hotel Hanoi, hopefully. And with that, I will begin the presentation. So you can see it's Vietnam Overview and U.S. Market Prospects. So tonight, or this morning for you guys, we're going to talk about overview and demographics because they're quite important here. Just an overview of the economic situation as well and Vietnamese agricultural production to give you more of an idea of Vietnam, then some international trade, and then most importantly, marketing, which I know is what you're most interested in. And then to start, there's just a map of Vietnam, just so people know. And then I just want to point out there's two major cities here in Vietnam. There's Ho Chi Minh City in the south, where Gerald and I are located, and there's Hanoi in the north, where we have another Office of Agricultural Affairs, where our colleagues Robert Hansen and Ben Patlock are located. And it just speaks to how important this country is to U.S. ag exports that we have two separate offices here. And also the markets in the north and south are quite different. I would say the south is a lot of more developed market than the north. It's more westernized down here as well, so that's quite interesting. And Food and Hotel Vietnam takes place in the south. There's a separate spin-off trade show called Food and Hotel Hanoi, which is taking place next week in the north, and this is the first time it's running, so we'll get some background on that, and hopefully we can have people exhibit at that in the future. So first I wanted to go over Vietnamese politics, just because this is kind of important. So as many of you know, since the country's reunification in 1975, Vietnam's political institutions have been dominated by the Communist Party of Vietnam. And then I just want to point out there's four high-ranking officials: President, Prime Minister, General Secretary, and the National Assembly Chairman, and actually she's a chairwoman. You're going to see that the president and the secretary are the same person. Unfortunately, the former president passed away a few months ago, so they're still working that out. But just it is still a communist country, which is something to keep in mind. Especially here in Ho Chi Minh, you don't see that as much, but it's good to understand. Some demographics, because this is very important. Vietnam is a small country, but it is a population of 97 million. You can see here on the population chart that most of people in Vietnam are younger. So another interesting fact, which I think a lot of people in the United States might not realize, the approval rating of the United States in Vietnam is 92%. Most people really look to the United States for cultural aspects, and definitely in food. Most people, as you can see in this chart, were born after the Vietnam War and don't have thoughts of the war, which is something that may be surprising people coming from the States. Another interesting thing is women in the workforce is almost 50%, and it's about the same in agriculture. I would say most of the people we work with here, I would say the majority are actually women who are in the companies and running it. Also, the literacy rate is quite high at 95%. What else was I going to say? Oh, unlike other countries in the region, there is not a lot of land left here, so because the population is quite high. There's also 54 ethnic groups, so it's dominated by the Kin majority, who are the traditional Vietnamese that I think most Americans would think of. But there are 54 ethnic groups, so the country is quite diverse. Also, an interesting thing to point out is the religion. 82% say they have none. There's also a small Buddhist population as well as a small Catholic population. And this is interesting because for vegetarians, for example, it's very common for people to be vegetarian here because of the Buddhist culture. They understand what vegetarians are. Beans, dried peas, and lentils are becoming more popular. We're working on that in our office. And because of Catholicism, people have an understanding of Christmas and other Catholic holidays, Christian holidays that we might have in the U.S. that maybe people who aren't Christian might not be aware of. Also wanted to point out that the urban population is 35%, but the population is rapidly urbanizing, and therefore the agricultural share of the workforce is shrinking. Some brief stats on the economy, just to give you a better picture. So the GDP was $649 billion, which ranks 35th in the world. Just to give you an idea, in 1995, when we reestablished relations, it was only $107 billion. So you can just see how much the country's grown in the past 25 years. It's actually pretty incredible. The GNI per capita is a little over $2,000. Again, in 1995, this was $260. So you can just see the rapid growth that's happening. Real GDP growth rate was 6.8% last year, and it's on pace to be very similar this year. So, and therefore, household disposable income is expected to grow by over 50% by 2030, which is huge. And then the next slide is just a graph on the GDP growth rate. Something interesting to note, Vietnam is in blue, East Asia and the Pacific in general is in orange, and the rest of the world is in gray. So you can see how much growth there's been in the past 5 years, and this growth will continue. And then some background, we'll move to ag production. So agricultural land is about 35% of the total land, and forests cover about 45%. But basically what this means is what I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of land left to grow on. They're basically utilizing all they have. The average farm size is less than an acre compared to the average farm size in the U.S., which is over 400 acres. So people are farming on very small land. And as we noted, where agricultural labor is shrinking, agricultural share of GDP is also shrinking. Just an idea of what Vietnam is producing, and this is selected commodities, and this is by billions of US dollars. You can see rice. Vietnam's the third largest exporter of rice. You can see pork, it's mostly for domestic consumption. Vietnam's also the second largest exporter of coffee after Brazil. Also export huge amounts of cashews. So you can just see there's a wide variety. And this just excludes fishery and forest products. Fishery products are huge. It was almost $7 billion last year in exports. And that's catfish, shrimp. And to switch to U.S. exports, you can see how much the exports have grown in the past 10 years. And last year, in 2017, we saw a drop because of some trade irritants that were keeping out our corn and DDGS. But this year, in 2018, I didn't include it, but we're on track to hit $3.5 billion in exports. And that's driven by a large extent to cotton, which is over $1 billion. Vietnam's actually the largest importer of U.S. cotton in the world. So, I mean, it's pretty incredible, the growth that we're seeing, which I mentioned earlier. Another fun statistic is that Vietnam was the fastest growing market among the top 12 U.S. agricultural export markets from 2014 to 16, and you can see Vietnam grew 13%, and that's in red. The only other markets that have been growing in the top 12 are the Netherlands and the UK. And then now this is our top 10 exports. Again, I didn't put 2018 in because we're still collecting data on that, but it's quite similar. So you can see cotton is king here. Tree nuts are huge. Soybeans are growing. We've seen corn and DDGS growing as well. Forestry products are growing because Vietnam imports American hardwood, makes furniture, re-exports it. You can see fish products, which is interesting because we have a large two-way trade in fish, other intermediate products. You can see there's a wide variety of what they're importing. And then this is also another chart just to show you a large amount is bulk, obviously, but consumer-oriented, which I think people on this call would be more interested in, has grown exponentially in the past 10 years and will continue to grow, and we'll get into those trends later in the presentation. And another thing I want to talk about is food safety, because food safety is huge here. The photo on your screen is a picture of a fish kill, a massive fish kill that happened in the center of the country. And this raised a lot of concerns with local Vietnamese. And food safety has always been an issue, but this kind of brought it to the forefront, and this was a few years ago at this point. But people are very worried about what's in their food. Obviously, there's a very large and influential neighbor to the north of Vietnam, which is also having some issues with food safety. So it kind of trickled down. Because of this, Vietnam just adopted in February Decree 15, which is the food safety law, which I just wanted to mention to you because the new law aims to simplify certification and sampling methods. Unfortunately, there's some inconsistencies in the law. There's infighting between ministries and within ministries. So if any of you have questions about this law, please feel free to contact our office and we can work with you to explain and help you understand more about the regulations so you can get your products in. The next hurdle I want to mention is tariffs. Tariffs are quite high in Vietnam. So you can see it's 16% is the average tariff compared to 5% in the U.S. tariffs. So some key commodities are beef, it's up to 34%, dairy up to 20%, fruit up to 40%. You can see the list. So that's part of what we do here as well. We try to lower tariffs in order to get more of our products in. And then the corollary to this is Vietnam has been very active in signing free trade agreements with different countries. So you can see here just the plethora of agreements that have been signed. The two new ones I want to point out are the EVFTA, which is the Vietnam-EU Free Trade Agreement, which is probably going to come into effect late this calendar year, early next calendar year, as well as CPTPP. Obviously, the United States withdrew from TPP, but Vietnam's still in it, and this is going to open up more competition with European countries who bring in fruit, for example, as well as Canada, who's in CPTPP. We already have issues with Australia and New Zealand because they're bringing in a lot of the same consumer-oriented products that we are, but at low or no tariffs. So this is a huge issue for us here. So after talking about some of the hurdles, some of the advantages in Vietnam for American products. So we mentioned Vietnamese are very concerned with food safety, but American products are looked at as high quality and safe. So as soon as they know it's from America, they know it will be safe and they can consume it and give it to their kids, which is a huge plus for us here. There's also growing demand for high-value consumer-oriented products. As I mentioned, and you saw in that chart, it's steadily increased over the past 5-10 years. And this is driven by strong GDP growth, high per capita income, a growing middle class. Also, I'll talk about this in a little bit more, but we're also seeing modern food retail growing, food service is growing, food processing is growing. So there's just a lot of opportunities for consumer-oriented goods here. Oops. There we go. Okay, the challenges. A lot of U.S. products are less competitive because, one, they're expensive. Two, there's higher shipping costs and longer delivery times because they're not coming from Australia and New Zealand. They're not coming from Asia. In some cases, they're coming from the West Coast, which is close there. But in your case, they're probably coming from the Gulf, which will take longer to get there. We also talked about the higher import tariffs. Another perception among Vietnamese importers and distributors is that U.S. exporters are not flexible or responsive. So, for example, we might not package like they want it packaged, or we might want them to buy a whole container, where the importer might prefer a consolidated shipment. So that's just something to be aware of, that you might have to work with the importer on some of that. Also, registration for new products is expensive and slow in many cases, and if that happens, obviously please contact our office, either in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, and the contact information is in these slides as well, and we can help you through that and maybe explain the process a little bit more. Obviously, you can work with SESTA as well, and we all work together to get U.S. products in. Another thing I wanted to point out was limited cold chain infrastructure for those of you who are working with products that require cold chain. Right now, outside of the major cities, it's very limited. Now I want to talk about the retail sector because this is what I know some of you are interested in. And also, I know Danielle provided a link to our exporter guide. We just published our retail sector guide, and that should be going up on the web pretty soon, hopefully. And that will be another really good resource for companies who are more interested in the retail sector. And I'll make sure Danielle can send that out once it gets posted. So in the retail, traditional markets still dominate with over 90% of total retail sales. So this is a huge number, But the good news is that modern retail outlets have a faster growth rate. So we're talking about 260% versus 5% since 2012. So we see the tide shifting to modern retail. And this is something the government's also focused on because of the food safety aspect. They want food to be clean. They want stores to be nice. They want to make sure people are consuming safe and healthy food. Another interesting thing is there's a lot of new local and international companies entering the market. So, for example, 7-Eleven just came in, GS25 just came in. Those are foreign companies. Q-Mart and Q-Mart Plus is their convenience store spinoff, and that's a Vietnamese company, and they're just ramping up. So they go from 0 stores to like 1,000 stores in a year. It's crazy. And we also see increasing investment from other Asian countries, which means that there's a lot of Asian products on the shelves. Then I also mentioned convenience stores are rapidly expanding. So there's currently over 2,000, and these are mostly located in the major cities. And now I'm entering the photo interlude to keep people awake. So here are some photos from Vietnam. Some trends we'll just want to talk about is people shop for food mostly every day here, which goes back to their shopping in traditional markets. But this, again, is changing. And you can see these are wet market situations. You can see, like, for example, the meat, the produce, it's just out. There's also thousands of these small shops. A lot of them actually have imported products. It's pretty common to walk down the street and see like a random shop on the side of the road or even outside selling like Quaker Oats, cereal, American cereal, for example. So that just gives you an idea about what these shops look like. They're pretty crammed in with lots of product. And then again, we talked about the emergence of supermarkets, and you can see some of the supermarkets here are quite nice. They're pretty beautiful. Not as nice as Cambodia. If people are interested in Cambodia, we also cover that from our office. Those are very new supermarkets, but you can see they have like chilled meat counters. You can also buy different goods like clothing, pots, and stuff in them. And then the last photo is convenience stores. So these are taking off. So you can see Circle K, which I'm from the East Coast of the United States. I didn't even realize Circle K was an American company when I moved here, but they're everywhere. Family Mart, as I mentioned, GS25, just a number of other companies, both foreign and domestic investment. And then some basic business tips just to go over to help you guys understand more about what we're working with here in Vietnam. The Vietnamese really value personal meetings, and you need to get cell phone numbers. And then if you have Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, that's really great as well. They do a lot of transactions over the phone just by texting. As in other Asian countries, people give out a lot of business cards, and they collect business cards, so that's very important. Also, Tet is very important. Tet is the equivalent of Chinese New Year. It's in the same time, and it would be, for those of you who don't know, it's like our Christmas. So there's like a frenzy leading up to Tet where people are outside all the time buying presents, preparing, and then during Tet, nothing happens. So people traditionally buy gift baskets for Tet. So we try to get American products in these gift baskets. Apples are are in them a lot, raisins, wine, for example. So any interesting products can be put in Tet gift baskets, and that's something if you want your product here before Tet, so you can take advantage of the holiday. And then the last is conduct due diligence, and feel free to contact our office or obviously any of the U.S. partners, because sometimes companies are not reputable, and we do see issues here. And so we just advise you to conduct your due diligence before you do any transactions. So now just to summarize some of the key points, the huge growth in per capita income and the growth in household consumption are leading to a lot of opportunities for U.S. products. There's a young population as well who has more westernized tastes than their parents. So they're really looking to the U.S. for culture, food culture, any type of films. Films are shown in English here all the time. People do speak English. It's the primary second language. So it's a really young and dynamic population that's really changing. So we really encourage people to come out and explore this market for themselves. And we, as Danielle said, are more than happy to meet with anyone coming through. So please contact our office if you're interested. And then we hope that you will be able to come for Food and Hotel Vietnam, which is April 24th to the 26th this year in Ho Chi Minh City. Just to give some more background, I know Danielle talked about this, but Food and Hotel Vietnam is the largest international food show in Vietnam. It's trade only, which is very important. So you're going to be making really good contacts and just meeting people you need to meet. It's a biannual show, so it's 2019 is the next one. Just to give you an idea, in 2017, we had 600 exhibitors, 13,000 visitors, and 20 international pavilions, so it's huge. And it's a USDA endorsed show, so we have a U.S. pavilion set up. We work very closely with the U.S. companies. And FAS has participated in the last 9 shows, so this is really a known entity to us, and we believe it's really great for making connections for people who have been in the market or new-to-market companies as well. And with that, here is our contact information. I'd also like to point out we have an APHIS office in Hanoi that just opened. And this will be posted online, and this information is also on the internet. So please feel free to contact any of us at any time, and we're more than happy to help. And then finally, just to give you an example of the U.S. partners that are currently working with us in Vietnam, it's quite diverse. So you can take a look at that. And obviously, SESTA is a great partner of us and ours, and we've been working closely together for a long time. And with that, I feel like I've talked enough, so we'll take questions.
Thank you so much, Megan. That was incredibly informative, and I feel like we all now have a much better idea of big picture Vietnam as well as specific to agriculture and food. I am not seeing any questions popping up in the Q&A box, shockingly. So if anybody does have questions that they think of afterwards, please feel free to email me. As I mentioned, I will send out an email with the recording of today's presentation as well as, or today's webinar, as well as copies of the presentations. And just to mention again, the Food and Hotel Vietnam, where SESTA will have a pavilion, the early bird special, the deadline is November 24th, which is this coming Saturday. So I'll also include a link to our website with that event. And we'd love to have you all sign up. Let us know if you have questions about that event. And all right. Well, Megan, I don't see any questions coming by. So I guess we're all done.
Okay, yeah, thanks. If there's, as you said, if anything comes up, please feel free to contact us. Yeah, and we're here to help.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying up late. I know it's quite late there, so we will let you and Gerald go home and get some sleep, and we'll be in touch. And thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you, Danielle.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.